When you whip climbing, how much force do you generate on yourself, the bolt, and the belayer? The LineScale 3 was literally developed because of a test we did 2 years ago in a gym where we put a LineScale 2 on the climber, the bolt, and the belayer. That ended up being a wildly popular video, but there was a common thread in the comments, and that was the LineScale 2 was not fast enough. It only read at 40 hertz or 40 times per second. And then people wanted to see graphs, and there was no load cell that would record internally. And so I helped Andy Riedrich from Line Grip Incorporated, who made the LineScale 2, come up with the LineScale 3. This is not a commercial. This is just me telling you why this exists. Hard as Easy just came out with a video with them falling in a gym with LineScale 3s all over the climber, the bolt, and the belayer. I'm not jealous because Ben has perfect hair. I'm jealous because Ben got to do this test with Mr. LineScale 3 himself, which Andy Riedrich explained really well how this works.
There's two strips that measure the material deformation. When you pull this, you can't see, but the material stretches. And these strips measure that, and the electronics convert that through a voltage that changes through the stretch of the strips. And so if you press, you also deform the material, just in a different way, but the strips just register material deformation, so you can go like this, or you can go like this. It's the same.
So a few weeks ago, I got to go to an outdoor climbing gym and do my own falls with 3 LineScale 3s. And Andrea weighs 130 pounds. Sorry, babe. And I weigh 160 pounds.
3, 2, 1.
1.08.
Yeah.
1.92.
Okay.
3.21.
Oh, wow. I hit 1.14.
I got 2.64. 4.27. So in Ben's video, you can see that he focuses on the force the climber sees for soft catches, big catches, or hard catches. Now, I don't know if I'd want to sign up for hard catches on purpose, but they were getting not that much of a difference considering it looked like their spine was going to fall out having a belayer pick their feet up right when they needed them the most. The max force they could get on their climber was 2.92. And the max force I could get at the outdoor gym was 2.64. And then from our test 2 years ago, the max force on the climber was 2.43. So considering we have a lot of variables in all these tests, we're all getting in that mid 2 kilonewton range. Now, just if you didn't know, a carabiner is rated for 20, 22, 24 kilonewtons, and your rope is, it'll break around 14 to 18 kilonewtons. And it's basically super strong enough considering the forces you're putting on it. What's ironic is when I do giant rope swings, I'm falling like quite a ways. I'm still only getting 3 kilonewtons. And even on our 200-meter Dan Osmond Leaning Tower project where we fell for 7 seconds, we were still only generating which isn't really that much more considering what it was. So it's nice to know that if the climber saw 1.41 kilonewtons or 2.93 kilonewtons, as you see in Ben's video, that it doesn't hurt too bad if it was a hard catch, at least in that scenario. I've had hard catches before. However, I want to know how much force the gear is seeing, the quick draw, because I know what that's rated for and I know what it really breaks at, and I want to know how much safety margin we have. Well, I scoured all of Ben's data that he sent me and I graphed it out and I put it on our website that will be in the link in the description below. It's the only link that leads to it, just to complement this video so you can see all the graphs, the charts, and the data. And the pattern I saw is we were in the high 3s, low mid 4 kilonewton range on the gear. And a bolt hanger would break around 20, 30, 40, or 50, depending on what it is. The bolts that's in the infrastructure, if you want to see how climbing gyms are made, the bolt's not just in the plywood. The bolt's in the infrastructure, and that definitely is not going to break before the hanger. And then the quick draw is going to break probably either at the dog bone or the carabiner, right? And that's going to be around that 20 kilonewton range. So you got a 5-to-1 safety ratio so far. The rope is also pretty bomber because it'll break in that 14 to 18 kilonewton range, but going up and down, it's in a U shape. It actually breaks stronger at that point where the quick draw is. What I found fascinating going through this data for hours was A plus B did not equal C. The force on the belayer, the force on the climber did not equal the force at the quick draw. It was typically more. Because there's enough friction in the system, the belayer is not going to see all the force. I thought the climber and the belayer would be, if they were equal weight, see the same force. But that's not the case. The belayer would see, for instance, 1, and the climber would see 3, and the quick draw would be at 4. Now, Ben's team was trying to get more force on the climber, which is a funny goal, by zigzagging the quick draws they were clipping to add friction. So the belayer ended up seeing less than 1 kilonewton, and the climber saw almost 3, but the quick draw saw 4.53, more than the two of them combined, because of friction. They zigzag the clips, of course there's friction. Yeah, hold on. But wait, there's more. When I fell, I was clipped normal, and it went more or less straight up. There wasn't a lot of friction, and Andrea's not heavy. That sounds horrible, I can't say that.
That sounds horrible, please don't say that.
And I pulled Andrea up, so it was what I would consider a soft catch. However, A plus B did not equal C there as well. As you can see in the graph, we had a discrepancy of 0.21 and 0.49 kilonewtons, which is a lot of friction. And on the other extreme example, we were actually able to create a huge difference in our Z-drag at Pipeworks, where the belayer only saw 0.36 kilonewtons, and there was a 1.99 friction difference. Now, another interesting thing to consider is if we were to take these 3, 4, 5 meter falls with 180 feet. I'm mixing metrics. If there is a 3, 4, or 5 meter fall with 50 meters in the system of rope, that's going to be a really soft catch. I don't think the climber would even get into the 2 kilonewton range. Whenever you catch somebody when they're kind of far away from you and they only fell 3, 4, 5 meters, it's pretty soft. I had one partner fall on a big wall once where he asked me if I was okay and how that was for me and all this stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like falling asleep sitting on my hull bag at the anchor. Good belayer, I know. And basically he whipped. I had no idea because he zigzagged around this thing and it was around a corner. There was literally no yank on my harness. So there's a lot of dynamics going on in a climbing fall and where the force ends up being dispersed. So we have the 3 graphs for all 13 falls on the website, plus the spreadsheets. You can go nerd out. But keep in mind, there is, hate to say it, nothing perfect about anything. The LineScale 3 is going to read up to 30 kilonewtons basically before the screen breaks, and the aluminum body is not going to break till 90 or 100 kilonewtons. But if you're going to measure something in the 1 kilonewton range, there is going to be a little margin of error. For example, if you have 0.1 kilonewton discrepancy on a 25 kilonewton test, that's not a huge percentage difference and doesn't obscure the results at all. But if you're testing things in the 0.75 or 1.2 range and you're trying to compare apples with apples, then, well, if it's 0.1 off in that instance, then it's off. But that's not the point. We don't need this to be super, super sterile, clean science because we're trying to get a range and a feel and a vibe of what's going on in the dynamics of this thing that a lot of people are scared of, and we're trying to break gear fear here. You might be able to notice some of the discrepancy when you compare the A plus B section of the spreadsheet where the friction is actually negative. I don't think that's how it worked in real life. I contribute that to the little tiny margins of error that you're going to get with a load cell of any type, including the good ones that I have in my SlackSnap machine. I'm gonna get less comments doing Troll Patrol. What will they have to say? Speaking of backyard science, I love backyard science. Backyard science doesn't mean we can't put out really nice graphs and really analyze what we saw and compare. It just means there is a lot of variables. There's variables in the weight of the climbers and the belayers. If they jump backwards or if they jump straight down, if they caught, there's a lot of ways to catch things. And so it's pretty hard to standardize or sterilize a test like that. So the UIAA does these fall tests to compare apples for apples, one rope to another, to find out how strong it is. So ironically, when they slow pull it, they put it in the best case scenario, which is a big diverter and pull nice and slowly. But when they drop test it, they put it in the worst case scenario. It's nice to know both ends of the spectrum. But to get that UIAA 7 falls rating on their gear, they're taking an 80 kilogram weight and they're doing a 1.8 factor fall. So that means there's a lot more falling than there is rope. And they do that over and over, and about 7 times, it breaks. Now, that's not exactly realistic. However, imagine if they were just taking a 50 kilogram thing doing a factor 1 fall. Imagine your label saying, UIAA, 97 falls. I don't see that being a realistic way to test one rope to another, having to drop something 100 or 500 times before it even breaks. So what they do is great for what they do, but it's super awesome to know that you can fall more than 7 times on a rope in real life and not have to replace it. What I'm really excited about is the video Ben's coming out with, where he actually goes to Mammoot's lab and they actually explain how the UIAA falls happen, how they're rated, how they measure it, and I'm super, super jealous. So Black Diamond or Sterling, if you want to invite me, I'm down to come. Now, since 150 of these bad boys are floating around the world, I want to show people how not to use these. You'll see in the videos that we're doing that we have a soft shackle going from our 2 points of our harness to the LineScale. I never just have that as a connection. You'll see in Ben's video and my videos that we'll tie into this and then have the tail, the long tail of the figure 8, go directly into our harness as well. Or you can use 2 soft shackles and tape them closed, and double wrap them is a nice trick so it stays as close as it can to the harness instead of floating up here and with the risk of it hitting you. So you don't want it up here. Even the Dano jump, we double wrapped it to get it here, so if you ever leaned forward into it, it's hitting this and not, that's the audio. It hits your chest and not your face. That would be a fail video for Josh. And another thing for setting your triggers is make sure it's more than 0.5. That was a lot of data to go through because it kept triggering after the fall because the climber weighed more than 0.5. A nice trigger when I'm doing these tests, if you ever end up doing these tests with your friends that have LineScale 3s, 3 to even 5 seconds of data, because it'd be nice to see what that sine curve levels out at. But you only need 1 second of pre-capture time because there's really nothing going on more than a second before the fall. It's gonna spike up and then you're gonna get these sine curves. So about 5 seconds afterwards, and you want it at 1280 hertz if you're only gonna do a few seconds anyways. And you don't wanna set this at 0.5 if any person's gonna be sitting on it because they're probably about 0.5. Now, 1 kilonewton is 224 pounds and no one's really gonna ideally weigh that. So if you set it there, they will generate more force than that when they fall. So you don't miss a trigger. And then the quick draw, if you're hanging on it and your belayer's hanging on it, sometimes it's nice to have it at maybe 1.5. Kind of hard to have it at the sweet spot. Science is not as easy as it looks, even backyard science.